What's up, guys? We made a form that we ducked out with material design, and we can type stuff, but nothing really happens when we hit submit. We're just clearing the form. What we'd like to do is submit that off to a server, right? Maybe we want to create a user. A lot of times that's how it works with forms. Now, before we do that, I want to show you how to do some client-side validation. And here's why you might want to do that. So let's say your server has like some requirements. So let's say a user is filling out the form here, Bob, 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 right? And let's say your username has to be at least 5 characters long. It'd be nice not to have to make a request to the server. The server tells you username has to be 5 characters long. You display it here, right? It's one way to handle it. But then you still have to make a request to the server when you know beforehand, and you could check on the client side before you send it off whether the username is long enough. So I'm going to show you how you can do that here. So we're going to be using the Material UI error thing here, this error text, to have it pop up if there is an error. So what we're going to do, this is the code. If you don't have the code and you want to follow along, I have a link in the description below so you can grab it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, in our state here, is we're going to keep a first name error. And this is basically just the error that the user, oops, I spelled that wrong. The error that associated with this field. So if we wanted to display an error, we're going to fix this field. So I'm going to change this to last name. And you want to have one, you can have one for as many fields as you want, just for each error text you'd like to display, basically. You can create an error. So for me, I'm going to do each one because I might want to have it for each one. So password error, and here we go. So now, down here, I'm going to say error text is equal to this.state.firstName error. And we're going to do this all the way down. Here we're going to do last name error. And we're going to do it for the username as well. Username error. And we're going to do it for the email error. And the password as well. Okay. And if you come back over here, you'll notice nothing looks different. If you type, nothing goes red, nothing's happening yet. But what we're going to do is when the user submits the form here, so right here on submit here, you'll notice what we're doing is we're just saying this dot props on change, this dot set state, and we're setting all these. We're just clearing the form here. So we could write a little comment, clear form. But what we could do before this is we could say check for errors. Check for errors. And we could say const error. So we could check for any errors, and if there's not an error, we go ahead and clear the form. Right? That makes sense. And then our check for errors, and we should really, instead of saying check for errors, we should say validate, because that's what we're doing. And here what we can do is we know the user submitted the form, so we could say if this.state.username is less than 5 characters, we're going to return false. And what we can do is we can handle multiple errors too. So we can say let isError equal false, and we're going to return isError, and we're going to say isError is equal to true. And then here we can say const errors, and then here we can say errors dot username error username needs to be at least 5 characters long. Now this is a very long error text, so I don't know how well this is going to look. We may need to fix it. But then what we can do at the bottom here is we can say if is error this dot set state. The state is going to stay the same, right? This dot set state. Oops, sorry, this will be state, and then we're also going to expand errors. So if there's an error, we're going to keep the state the same, but we're also going to add on any errors that could occur. So let's see this in action. Oh, validate. That should be this dot validate here. Right, so say we come down here, we just type in Bob for everything, hit submit, and that did not work at all. So let's see what happened. Username dot length. There we go. Now let's see if that fixes it for us. Hit submit, and bam, it says username needs to be at least 5 characters long. Now we're not quite done with this, because let's say I want to show you 2 other things. So we're able to stop them, that's good. There's 2 things we want to do. One, I want to show you how you can display 2 errors at the same time. So let's say you want the username is greater than 5, but maybe you also want to check if there's an @ sign. So what we can do is say this.state.email.contains, I believe contains, we're about to find out if contains is actually a thing, I think it is, contains @ sign. So if it doesn't contain @ sign, the email, we're going to throw an email error, requires valid email. Because we're passing in Bob as the email, that's not a good email. Right, so submit, and we get an error, so contains is not a function. The other one is index of, so if it's equal to -1, that's how you know. If you don't know what index of does, it's going to search email for the @ sign, and if it's not there, it's going to give us a -1. So we want to know when there's not. So if I hit submit, you'll notice requires valid email, username needs to be at least 5 characters long. So we see both these errors pop up. So that's cool. So now we're able to handle X amount of errors. But the problem we have now is, actually never mind, this will work. I was gonna say, well, no it won't. I'll show you why. We're not clearing the errors. So like, I'll make my username long, and this will be a nice, that's a nice email. Both of these are valid, right? Because now we're longer than 5. And this is actually a valid email because we have an @ sign. So I submit, but notice we're not clearing the errors. So that's the last thing we need to do. So here we can just say first name error is equal to that. And we could just come up back up here and copy what the initial one is. Yeah, so we can just copy this whole initial state because we want to set it back to what it was at the start. And then bam. So now if we come back over here, we can type in our form, hello, how are you? And of course, I'll put an @ sign here. We'll get a bad username. So we submit, can make it a little bit longer. Maybe I get rid of this. And you'll notice how it still shows red here. So what we can do is we also want to handle that case, right? We want to clear it if they fix it. So every time they submit, what we want to do is clear the form at the end. Or we could do it at the beginning, that's fine. So at the beginning, actually, I just thought of a smarter way so that we only do this once. A better way to do it is in the errors. Set all the errors to nothing. So if we pop that over, so now we're setting all the errors to nothing. We're grabbing the errors if they exist. And now we're going to set the state whether or not there's an error because we might want to clear them. So now if we're typing stuff out here, so our email is good, right? But now our username is too short. So I lengthen the username, but then I invalidate the email. So bam, those switch, perfect. Now I add the @ sign, and this is a valid submission, so we submit. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to show you how to submit that to a server. So now that we can do a little bit of validation on the client side, we can check and make sure that hopefully when they submit it, you only have to submit it once to the server and then you're good. So that'll save you time and just server usage, which is very important. And as you can see, you can add as many of these conditions as you want here in the validate function, and then you just set whatever you want your error to be here. So that's it for this, guys. I'm going to put the code on GitHub. There'll be a link below if you want to check this out. And yep, next video you can expect is submitting these guys to an actual server and then handling any errors that the server might throw. So thanks for watching. See you next video.